Welcome to episode 8 of the Unvarnished Edit, where two friends talk about what it's actually like to live an adversity filled life. Be prepared to laugh, possibly cry, and swear along with us. This is Angie, and in today's episode, we discuss Jaylene's experience with the criminal justice system and how it changed her. We hope you enjoy.
Heyo. Good morning.
Hello.
How
Good
are
morning.
how are you?
Good. I'm all right.
Yeah,
It's Monday. Yeah.
I
How
know.
was your weekend?
You know what? My weekend was great. It's funny because we always record these on Monday mornings, and it's always the Monday that I don't have my daughter. So I'm always like, I didn't have my daughter
Oh,
this weekend. I relaxed. I like we recorded on the other Mondays. I would be like, my hair would look like I stuck my finger in a light socket, and I would be like exhausted. But no, this
maybe that's why we schedule that way.
probably. The Masters, the golf tournament was this weekend, and I watch a little bit of golf. Michael plays golf, watches all the golf. He's very golf. Michael's very sports ball. Doesn't matter what it is. We watch a lot of sports in this house. He enters like this pool every year, and this year he convinced me to pick some players. So you just pick like a bunch of players, and they're like spaced out, so you can't pick like all the best players. They have like tiers,
Yeah.
and their composite score is your composite score. And this is like a huge pool. There's like over 1,000 people in it. So you win quite a bit of money if you win. Michael's team all weekend, last place, like dead last. My team, I was in first place going into at the end of the day Saturday. So it's like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or other
Yeah.
golf days. I was in first place, y'all. I picked this team based purely on vibes.
Yeah.
One of them I had seen a good Instagram story about. The other one I just liked his name. Like this is like no logic to this whatsoever. So I was in first place going into Sunday morning. And I was like so stressed out. I couldn't hardly watch it. I was like, and I lost. I did not. My team, the person I picked in my top tier actually won the tournament. So that was a good
Very
pick.
nice. Look at that.
But the rest of my team fell apart. So if like Shane Lowry ever gets to see this podcast, he cost me this weekend. Hai Tung Lee, a 10 stroke on a 5 par. Thanks, man.
Oof.
Yeah, it was brutal. That was brutal.
Aw.
So, yeah, that's how
It's
my
always
weekend
that
was.
it's always that beginner's luck piece too. We used to, working in a bar for many decades, especially the sports bars, they always had, football pools and things like that. And it would always be the girlfriends who knew nothing. And I'm not saying that women don't know anything about it, because please,
Yeah,
that's not us.
yeah.
But what it would be the girlfriends, the boyfriends, watched religiously. The girlfriends would just come along, they would pick and they would win every single time
'Cause
over
I'm
the
so
guys, and the
mad.
guys would be so pissed. I found it absolutely hysterical.
Yeah. Michael's
So,
friends were so impressed. They were like, you have figured out the hack to get your wife to watch the Masters all weekend long. I would have watched it anyway. We always watch the Masters, but
yeah.
they were very impressed. They were very impressed.
I caught up on all of my network shows that I have not watched, that I just didn't have a chance to watch during the week.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was nice.
That's very
I
nice.
was on the couch. Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
We deserve the rest.
I needed the rest. I don't think I realized how tired. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I've
it's
been
not
so.
until you actually, like, if I'm really tired, I don't know it until I sleep really well. And then I wake up and I'm like, wow. Like, I'm
Mhm.
always like, everything is so much clearer after it's over, even how tired I am.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that could be dissociation for the win or dissociation for the loss,
Yeah.
whichever way you want
Yeah.
whichever way you wanna take it. Yeah. That kind of, though, goes into our topic for today, because we are gonna have a conversation. We've talked about it right before, that Jaylene has been in prison. And so we are gonna have a conversation around that, right? Just to give you all um kind of a foundational piece to it. But it's a big part of your story,
Yeah.
right? Not only a big part of your story, but it's a part of our story.
I wanted to do this because it's like when I bring it up, it feels like I'm putting an elephant in a room, right? and I hate that. And also, it's like, do you remember that movie Pitch Perfect when it first came out? And Rebel Wilson was like, her character's name was Fat Amy, and they were like, "Why do you call yourself that?" And she's like, "So nobody else can." Right? And so sometimes I
Mhm.
think about that a lot where I'm like, if I put it out there and I can show people that like this is a thing that I'm at peace with and I have done a ton of work to understand, you like nobody can hold it against me if
Yeah.
I take like total ownership of it. So, but also I just want to like not make it be this mysterious thing that because does come
Yeah.
up a lot, right? In some of the conversations we're having, we allude to like, hey, that time I was in prison. And I just think it's better to just like say it. I don't know how this is going to go. I'm like relieved to have this conversation and also super nervous. I'm a little bit nervous. I don't think anyone knows the entire piece from beginning to end because it
Yeah.
happened over such an incredibly long span of time.
Yeah.
And I think you're probably the closest person. You're the person that probably knows the most of it. I have a couple friends who most people know this story from me being in prison.
Mhm.
For not a lot of
Mhm.
people know how I ended up there in a real
Mhm.
way. Like that was
Mhm.
something that was really secret. It was really like hidden from
Yeah.
everybody. And so I think it's kind of nice to just be like, this is the whole deal. And I think some people that listen that know me are going to have some puzzle pieces filled in. And,
Yeah.
you know, I also, as we'll address, ended up in prison during COVID and
Mhm.
I just
Mhm.
disappeared. And a lot of people had no idea that I had gone to prison. And I just kind of fell off the face of the planet. And I used
Mhm.
COVID as like the reason. And so
Yeah.
there are also going to be some people that listen to this that are like, holy shit, Jaelene was in prison?
Let's just start from
Yeah.
the beginning
Where
where
do we
you're
start?
comfortable with. Yeah.
Where do we start? I mean, first of all, if you're listening to this, we're going to talk about substance abuse. A part of this is also going to be a maternal trauma. So if you have lost a child or that is something that is hard for you, you don't have to listen to this. You can just
Yeah.
know that I went to prison and I'm fine now and come back
Yeah.
to us in a different episode if this is challenging.
Yeah.
So I guess we're going to go through kind of how I got there, what it was like being there, and what it's like since I've been home. So I've been home for 4.5 years. I got home in October of 2021. So I've had quite a bit of time to like let this settle. So this is a good time to tell the story, I guess. So when people
Yeah.
ask me how I ended up in prison, my answer is always the same. It's always the same way as everyone else: drugs or related to drugs, right? And I know
Mhm.
that that's an overgeneralization because definitely there were some people I was in prison with who were not there because of drugs, but the majority of people, you know, and I don't have a statistic, but, you know, substance abuse or crimes or incidents related to substance abuse or a partner who is involved in substance abuse, right? This is a main tenet of
Mhm.
the criminal justice system is substance abuse. So I actually had a addiction to, well, everything, every substance that I could get my hands on, but primarily my issue was prescription drugs. And nobody knew. Literally, when I say there might have been people that suspected, looking back,
Mhm.
I'm sure when it came out that there were people in my life that were like, "Oh, now I understand what's going on."
Mhm.
But there was nobody in my life that knew I was purchasing prescription drugs from someone. So it wasn't like one of those things where people knew I had this problem and they were trying to get me stop or trying to help me or anything. I was on an island and I was very high functioning. It was when I was performing the best at work, and it was when I was doing the most as a parent in a public performing way. I couldn't tell you if I was doing the most as a parent at home because I have almost no recollection of this time period of my life because I was incredibly high
Mhm.
every single day, all day long. But where it
Mhm.
started was right after my divorce, I got pregnant while I had an IUD, and I had no idea I was pregnant. because I had an IUD. And I was very sick and I had been going to the doctor and I was trying to figure out what was going on. So I was actually seeing a doctor, and I guess that I found out later that doctor just, I said I had an IUD, and so she thought I wasn't pregnant and she never did a pregnancy test. That's something that I still struggle with a lot. If she would have done a pregnancy test at the first time that I went to see her, what would my life be like, right? How would things have changed? But I did not find out I was pregnant until I figured it out myself. I figured it out myself because I was laying in bed one day and I saw a baby move and I was like, what just happened to me? I know that sounds crazy. I know that sounds crazy, but I was seeing a doctor. I had no reason to even, but then all of a sudden, all my symptoms just click, 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 click. This makes sense. That ended really poorly. There was an issue. The baby had actually pushed my IUD into my amniotic sac, and I was leaking amniotic fluid, and it ended very, very poorly. And because we live in the state of Arizona, my medical options were very, very limited. It got to the point where, I was in the hospital, and what I wanted to do to make this end was not legally permissible. And my doctor pretty much told me, you've either got to find a judge to issue an emergency order to terminate the pregnancy, but there's only one doctor in the state of Arizona that will even do it, and you'll be dead by then. So you are going to have, I was forced to deliver a stillborn, and it was terrible. And so in the aftermath of that, at the time, I had 3 sons, and everyone who knows me knows I had always wanted a daughter. That was just like how I envisioned my life going. Through the course of some legal conversations afterwards, I had requested all of my medical records. And when I had the baby, I had asked not to know the gender. I couldn't handle that at the time. And so I was like printing all of the medical records at work, and I was going to pass them off to our lawyer. And I was in a rush. I had to go to the elementary school that day for a concert, and all the papers fell on the floor. And like in a way that it only happens in a movie, the one piece of paper that was face up on top had the gender of the baby, and it was a girl. And for me, that was the beginning of the end. Very few people knew that I had that I was pregnant, let alone had lost a baby. My partner at the time worked out of the country 4 of the 5 work days of a week. I had 3 young children that I was trying to figure out how to co-parent. I mean, I left the hospital, I went home, I slept for one day, and I went and picked my kids up from their dad's house and was making lunches, right? And I had lost a lot of blood and I had to have a transfusion, and I was so weak. I remember there was one day I was packing school lunches and I was in our pantry and I was so tired and sick, and I just remember like kind of leaning against the door frame, and I'm the only adult in the house and my kids have no idea what I've just gone through. Of course, they're babies themselves. And I just remember thinking like, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Like, I don't know if I can do this. So I see this paper and it says, it's a girl, and I'm like, of course, right? Of course. I I was already feeling a lot of shame because how could I have done that to a child and not known I was pregnant? And then to find out that I had done it, to the one thing I always wanted. Now, I want to be clear. I love my children. I was happy to
Mhm.
be a mom of 3 boys. This is nothing about that. It was just like a childhood fantasy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to go to the school, and I was going to have to see my ex-husband, and I was going to have to see my kids, and I was alone, and I was a mess. I was a mess.
Mhm.
And I ran into a friend who knew what was going on. And I said, I don't think I can go into this recital. Like, I don't think I can do this. And she was like, you have to. Like, you have to. And she pulled out a bottle of Xanax and she was like, just take one of these. You'll be okay. That's where it
Mhm.
started for me. I was so thankful to have that edge taken off, that feeling of like not caring what's happening, the ability to like medically and mentally dissociate from just the trauma that I was going through at the time. And it escalated so quick. I couldn't even wrap my brain
Mhm.
around what was happening before I was fully
Mhm.
addicted to anything. Ambien, Xanax, Percocet were my personal favorite. Percocet were the easiest for me to get. At the time, my gynecologist was prescribing me Ambien because I just could not sleep. Of course, she has no idea that I'm also buying and taking Xanax and Percocet. And I was able to keep myself like afloat through this time. And I think because I had been through something so difficult, maybe that's why people around me weren't recognizing that something was off, right? Something was
Yeah.
off. I was missing pickup times for my kids. There were times where my kids would like show up in the backyard. They would come through the gate and come to the sliding door and be like, Mom, you didn't pick us up from school. And I was like, oh my gosh, I lost track of time. But no, I was just asleep. Like I was just not present. So
Yeah.
when I say high functioning, I was high functioning on the outside. And the way that this ended up going was I had a lot of access to finances at work. I was a signer on the bank account. And so
Mhm.
I ended up starting like it always does, right? Here's just one Xanax. Here's just $20. Here's just, right? And it's like this
Mhm.
thing that creeps in, the amount of mental gymnastics and justification that I gave
Mhm.
myself, right? Oh, well, I worked overtime and didn't get paid for it. Or I mean,
Mhm.
it was ridiculous. It was just,
Mhm.
so I was taking money from work. So this went on for about 5 years, from 2010 to 2015. In early 2016, I was consulting, and it was 9 days before my birthday, so it was early January, and I was driving to see a client. I was buying drugs from a coworker. I'll just say that much. I'm not gonna get too far into that. And I had left that job, and it was a long drive to where she lived, and so I was trying to find some other way to get some drugs. And I was downtown and I just saw someone, and I don't know how to describe it other than I saw her and I knew I would be able to get some Percocet from her.
Yeah.
And she appeared unhoused. And so I pulled over and I started chatting with her about, are you okay? Do you need money? Like, so benevolent. And we start having this conversation, and it comes around to perks, and a police officer walks up to us. And he starts giving us a hard time almost immediately. And she steps in and like covers for me and basically says she's just here helping me. She's trying to find me a hotel room, whatever. So he leaves. I'm freaking out because I just almost got arrested. He leaves, and she just looks at me. She's like, Lady, I don't think you know what you're doing. And I was like, I don't. And she was like, you,
Yeah.
you need to go home.
Yeah.
And I got in the
Yeah.
car and I was like, what just happened to me? What am I
Yeah.
doing? It was like everything was just so clear in that moment. What am I doing? I have
Yeah.
amazing children. I have an amazing life. I have a family that I know always I can go to them if I need something.
Yeah.
I knew all of these things. But
Yeah.
because I'm me, I went to my meeting and I sat there the whole time and I took notes and I talked about the problem and I did my consulting job. And
Yeah.
I went home and I went through every bag I had, and I got together all my pills that I had because I had them hidden all over the place.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
I counted how many days until my birthday. It was 9 days to my birthday. I counted how many pills I had, and I said, okay, I have this many pills and this many days. If I want my first day not high to be on my birthday, this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I just went through all the withdrawals. I called in sick to work. I drank wine like there was no tomorrow. I was throwing up. I
Yeah.
mean, thankfully, I was home alone a lot. Some pieces fell into place. My kids were at their dad's. Like, everyone just thought I had the flu. Meanwhile, I'm dying. I'm in bed and I think I'm dying, dying.
Yeah. For sure. Yep.
And I also know that this doesn't end the problem because I have this financial ruin that I have made. It was a family friend. It was, someone that had a very high level of trust in me that I had been betraying for years. And so this was like a, a really big problem in my mind looming. So I got sober. I got clean, I should say. And a couple days later, the owner of the business called me and said, someone's stealing from me. And he said who he thought it was. And I was like, oh my God. And he said, I'm going to the bank. I'm going to start talking to the bank. And I said, okay. And he hung up the phone. And I don't think I have ever sweat so much in my life as in those next 30
Yeah.
seconds. I think every part of my body just completely shut down. I mean, I was just
Yeah.
like, but I knew I could not allow this to unfold in any other
Yeah.
way than being honest. So I immediately called him back and I said, don't go to the bank. I said, I know what's going on and it was me. I did it. And I don't even know what happened after that. I have no idea. I know the next couple days were really, really hard and I can't even imagine what they were like for this person. Eventually, his son reached out to my parents and said, this is what's going on. Can you please help? So my parents called me, and my dad said, I've just received this phone call. I've just gotten off the phone with your old boss, and this is what he's telling me. And I said, Dad, I have a drug problem, was the first thing I said. So my parents worked out a deal with him. We came up with a dollar amount that I felt was accurate, that he agreed to. We did some really stupid things. We didn't sign any paperwork. We didn't come to any agreements. We made some big mistakes. And
Yeah.
my parents paid him a significant amount of money, and I thought that was the end. This was in 2016. My parents demanded. I didn't want to go to rehab. I was afraid I would lose my kids. So I started going to
That's
NA.
an episode that's an episode in itself
Yeah.
of the reason women, especially mothers, do not go to rehab,
Yeah.
and a way that we need to,
Yeah.
yeah, change the system there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was pretty sure I would lose my kids if I went. And so,
Yeah. Yep.
right, I mean, you know him. So I started going to NA. You took me to my first meeting. I started going to NA. I hated it, but it was also like probably a good starting point for me. I got into
Mhm.
therapy. I tried to quit drinking. I tried to work out my relationship, right? My partner at the time, who is the same person I had been with this whole time since the baby loss. That was very hard. That it didn't go well for us. We're obviously still not together. I just tried to put my life back together. And I did a really good job of it, actually. That period of my life I'm really proud of. I got a great job. I I made great friends. I did really good things. I went through the end of that relationship, which that I did not use. I have never taken a prescription drug outside of the way that you're supposed to since then. I've never taken a Xanax, an Ambien, or Percocet since my birthday in 2016. I think that's crazy when I look at stats and I look at all of the different things I've gone through since then, that I never relapsed on pills, but that's probably because I was also an alcoholic. So I still had this other socially acceptable way to manage these things. But I
For
did,
sure.
yeah, I went through periods where I wasn't drinking. I was battling with that. I still battle with that. In 2018, I was on a business trip and I got a phone call from a detective at the Phoenix Police Department asking me to come in for an interview. And I was shocked. I My soul left my body for probably the third time in this experience. And I called you and I said, what am I going to do? This is back. This is back. And one other friend, I talked to one other friend, and both of you kind of said the same thing. You this is never going to go away. You can't run from this. You can't. So I made the decision to go talk to the police. At this point, it's 2018, so this has been in my life for 8 years. It's been a weight that I cannot explain. I just felt like it's got to end. Like, I can't carry this for the rest of my life. So I went to the police without a lawyer. So that's like mistake number 1000 here. You went with me. I was terrified. But I will tell you, in that interview with the detective, I said something that I still stand by today, and that this is my intent. This was my intent. And I told him, I said, I did this, and I've got to clean the slate. I have to be accountable for what I did. And
Mhm.
I can't not do this anymore. It's going to kill me. and I've got to end this. And so if you're telling me that this is the way I have to end this, that this is the way it's going to go, then I'm going to do it. Take me to court, do what you have to do. Just, I'm done. Like, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to try and say I didn't do it. I'm not, I've got to get this out of my life. And so we left that with a really simple statement of, if they decide to press charges, they'll let you know. And I
Yep.
went 2 years with nothing. Nothing.
0
Nothing.
damn thing.
Nothing.
Yes.
Nothing. Every time the doorbell rang, I was like, this is it. Nothing. I hadn't moved. I didn't change my address. I didn't change my phone number. I've never tried to figure out what happened. I don't know how this came to be, but in 2019, I went on, was it 2019? Yeah. In 2019, I went on a cruise, and for work, I was on a work trip, and returning from Mexico, I was arrested on the cruise ship. There had been a warrant out for my arrest for quite a long time, so it obviously does not look good, right? Warrant out for your arrest for a very long time. You're returning from Mexico. Things that does not look good. I got incredibly lucky, and the weekend judge in New Orleans released me on bond. The DA was like, I don't know how you did that, but you best get back to Phoenix ASAP, right? And so I had 7 days. My dad bonded me out. I love you, Dad. Thank you. That was the most terrifying experience up to that point of my life. I had never been in jail before. I I thought that was the worst thing, right? Being in jail in New Orleans, because I had never been to jail in Phoenix before. And so I came home, I found a lawyer, I turned myself in Phoenix. So I was released on my own recognizance. We then went through over a year of court. So this is where a lot of people came into the story, obviously. Since my dad had paid in 2016, the only people in my family that I'm aware of that knew what was going on were my parents. Maybe they had told my siblings, I don't know. Maybe my sister knew. I think my sister knew. And then now here I am going through court, and still a lot of people don't know, because I was being told by everyone, you're going to get probation. There is no way you're going to jail. There's no way you're going to jail. From my lawyer to other people in the court system to my friends, everybody, the universal thing I was being told is, you're going to get probation. And so I didn't tell my kids. That is the biggest regret I think I will carry for a long time. My kids had no idea. They were old enough to know. They deserved to know. She went to every court hearing with me. You showed up for me in ways that I never even asked you to. You were like the carrier of the weight with me. And it was hard. Those days were awful.
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 Absolutely awful.
It was hard.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Mhm.
my victim in this story is at this point in time still extremely angry. The times that we went to court and saw him were really, really tense and scary. I was scared.
Mhm.
I was really scared.
Yeah.
At one point,
Yeah, rightfully so.
yeah. At one point, when we were getting close to a plea, I had missed a court date. It was not my fault, but I had missed a court date. Someone had accidentally canceled it on the shared calendar that my lawyer had. And that put a lot of pressure on me to do a plea deal, because now I had a judge saying, you skipped court. I was put on an ankle monitor. That was humiliating. It just all started to go bad then. And I had very few choices. So here we are. It's 2020. I am 4 years clean from drugs. I am 4 years past what I thought was the end of this. I'm 10 years past the beginning of it, and I have to go to jail. I have to go to prison. And I'm given a week to get my affairs in order, to sign a plea, which means I have a week to tell my kids that your mom is going to prison, and they had no idea that I even had a drug problem. They knew nothing. This must have felt like the biggest blindside to them. I have to talk to their fathers and try and square my kids away. My plea was for 2.5 years. I went,
Mhm.
and you and my boyfriend at the time came with me to sign my plea, and I didn't want anyone else to go. My kids, one of my kids in particular, still is upset that I didn't let them come. I think they wanted to have like that face to face with this other person who had been such a big part of our lives. And
Yeah.
I just couldn't handle that. That would have been awful. It was already bad
Yeah.
enough, you know? And I remember me and my lawyer had to go into a private room to review the plea, and he had to explain everything to me. And I said, you know, and my lawyer was devastated. He could not believe I was going to prison. And he told me there was no way around this. This man was not going to allow you to not be in
Mhm.
prison. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. And I remember saying, if this is what he needs for this to be the end for him, and I don't mean this in like, oh, I'm such a sacrificer. It was just like, enough. Enough then.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. I'll just give it. I'll
Yeah.
just here, take it. Just please take it
Yeah.
because I couldn't have it get worse.
Mhm.
And so I remember we went in to sign the plea and I
Mhm.
signed my name and that was that. And I was gone.
Mhm.
And I said bye to you guys. And like 30 minutes later is when I had the first panic attack of my life.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
I would trade 100 days in jail in New Orleans instead of 2 in Maricopa County. I will tell you that right now. That place, there's a reason why the Justice Department sues Maricopa
Mhm.
County. It is disgusting. It is unsurvivable. You cannot go to 4th Street or whatever it's called and come out
Mhm.
like an okay person. It's not possible. And I had a tremendous amount of support, a tremendous amount, and seeing people come through with nothing is just the most eye-opening experience of my life is the time that I spent in county. I signed my plea in February of 2020. My sentencing was in March of 2020. I was supposed to be sentenced on that day and then within a few days transferred to prison. But COVID had already hit. They shut down transfers. I was stuck in county for a long time. It was really scary. I had no idea what was going on in the real world. All of the officers were like lying to us, saying our families were being
Mhm.
melodramatic. This is not that bad.
Mhm.
I think partially is because what do you like? They don't need a panic on their hands, right? And
Right. Right.
partially just because they're mean. They're just mean.
Right.
And there are some officers, correctional officers, that make it their goal to add on to your punishment, right? They want your life to be miserable while you're there. And
Mhm. Mhm.
sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I see why, because there are inmates that are just really, really hard.
Yeah.
And also, like, the punishment is being there. That's the punishment. There is no
Mhm.
punishment that says you can't have edible food. There is no punishment that says you can't be treated like a human. Being there
Mhm.
and not having access to your life is the entire punishment, but it's
Mhm.
not in real life. So
Mhm.
I was
Mhm.
eventually transferred to prison, and that's where I spent the next 22 months of my life with no contact in person because COVID shut down everything.
Because of co
We had no visitation. We had no outside services. There wasn't even church. Everything was shut down. It was the most it was the most trying and the most freeing time of my life. It was the
Yeah.
first time in my life where I didn't have the ability to take care of anyone else. And I had committed to my
Mhm.
family. I think I said this to everyone. If I have to do this, I'm going to come out better. I'm going to, and this is so me, right? Like I have,
Right.
if everyone is going to suffer, it better be for a reason. I better come out a better person. I am
Mhm.
going to make this time something I reflect back on as an important time of my life. And that is actually very true. I reflect back on that time with a lot of heartache and sadness, but with a lot of pride. I did a lot of work. I did a lot of
Mhm.
work. I read a lot. I journaled a lot. I got a lot of perspective. I figured out who my friends were in the old adage, right? I
Yeah.
felt very loved and supported, and I also felt extremely lonely and sad. I made great friends. I still have a little bit of contact with one person in particular who I learned so much from and who saved me so many times from myself and from my own brain. And I also struggled a lot. I started having panic attacks. I had severe anxiety.
So
Yeah.
rightfully so, it's prison.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be
Yeah,
easy.
yeah. Well, it's not that it's not supposed to be easy, but the environment dysregulating I mean, the whole entire piece there is. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there is no safety. You're living on that edge of how can I feel a modicum of safety while also knowing I'm just trying to survive. And how do we, and you went in there because I remember you're like, I'm gonna read, I'm gonna say, and we joked about, well, I mean, this is the only way that we're ever gonna take care of ourselves
Yeah. This is
because
this is where I
because if
learned.
we're out, our kids are that's just it. We're
Yeah.
taking care of everybody else. And so I remember having conversations about, how you were just going to focus on yourself and focus, and how do we heal and work on ourselves when we are not safe, when we are in survival, right? And yeah, of course you had anxiety. Of course you started having panic attacks. Any human stress response system would have that same response. And then you're going to try and go into something vulnerable like working on yourself.
Yeah.
Just putting it in a perspective.
No,
That's
it's
all.
true. And this is when I started meditating. I started meditating in prison. And that's where I figured a lot of stuff out. And I would,
Mhm.
when I was, for the bulk of the time that I was there, I was on a yard that is massive. There's so many people there. And you're in a huge dorm room, and there are people everywhere. I was not in a cell. Finally, at the end of my stay, I moved to a yard where there were cells, and that was heaven. That was heaven.
I bet.
And during certain times, throughout the whole COVID situation, we would be in lockdown and we would have 1 hour outside a day. So you have this room of over 350 women in this bay. So there's about 1,000 of us in a building because there's 3 bays that are jam packed, and we can only go outside 1 hour a day. And that meant the phone lines were incredibly long. I almost never got to talk to my family because waiting in line for the phones would take up my whole hour break. And I had to walk, I had to run, I had to do something else. We did not and I still don't understand what COVID was like. People
Yeah.
tell stories, and I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's like this weird thing that I know nothing about at all. It was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you would ask questions and they would just never answer us. It was terrifying. And so then I would
Yeah.
tell my family, and they're all having different experiences. And for some of them, they're sheltering in place and they're fine. And for some of them, they're not. Meanwhile, my kids are in a house with their dad and his wife at the time, and it's not going well. And schools are shut down, and the person in their life that was their main emotional support is me, and I'm gone. And that's probably the part that is like, it's okay if I suffer because I did this.
Yeah.
But to see the suffering of other people because of what I had done was a lot of reflection, and like, how do I move past this? How do I make this okay, I guess, or something that I can handle, or something that we can talk about? Because for a long time, I couldn't even talk about it, without
Yeah.
just, all I would say to my kids is, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And
Mhm.
that doesn't move the conversation ahead.
Yeah.
And so that was that, having the COVID layer on top of it made like the guilt and the shame a lot deeper. A lot. And
I
there's
bet.
there's some still there. I still work on this. This is, this part of my life is a big part of EMDR. Some of the things my kids went through were really, really challenging, and things that they should not have had to suffer through. And to know that
Mm.
it's because of me is really hard.
Yeah.
So it's all hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The whole entire thing. And gosh, I my memory we've discussed before.
Yeah.
My memory is terrible because of my dissociative disorder. However, um I just very much so remember taking you down to Phoenix PD the first time to give your statement and, having no clue, just
So
having
naive.
no clue, so naive in the whole entire space that if we just take accountability for what we did, that it would all work out, and it does, right? Like, it does, but we don't have that ability to foresee what that whole entire path because it has, right? Like,
Yeah,
horrible experiences, but it still has worked out, and um, you are in a better space because of it.
yeah,
Which is does not negate any of the horribleness that it was, like, it is a hard fought space that you are in a better space now, right? Like, that was hard fought for that. Hard fought for that. Yeah.
I think
Um,
one of the when you say that, it reminds me that at the time, because it was so emotionally charged, I had emotionally betrayed this other person, and it was so
Mhm.
emotionally charged for them, rightfully so. I thought putting it in the hands of neutral parties would end up with
Right.
a better solution. I had faith in that. You're told that, like, this is a neutral, innocent until proven guilty and fair. And while I knew that it wasn't a fair system, I'm not blind to the way criminal justice plays out. Like, I wasn't like Pollyanna about it, but I thought it would take the temperature down. I thought it would take it to maybe a little bit more of a level playing field between him and I, and it
Yeah.
did not.
It did not. No, it did
No, it
not.
actually escalated.
Yes, it did.
So
Yeah.
that was an eye opener for me, that moving it into a court and it actually made it worse. It made it added like fuel to the fire from my
Mhm.
perspective on the other person's
Mhm.
part. And it was intense. Those
Yeah.
days that we went together were intense, and I mean, I can't even I there's no way to, like, express gratitude for it, right? It's just something that I hope is just known between friends. I don't know what I would have done in that time without you.
Yeah. Well, you would have done what you always do. And you would have come through, but I did feel very privileged because I know how hard it is to just let anybody, especially in a space where you have 0 control. It was like a very, very known piece that there was 0 control on your end, right? We were in that space where you could just do the next right thing and the next right, and you have your hands, the fate is in somebody else's hands and not in yours, and that was to invite anyone into that space with you, um, that's that's a that's a big privilege to be in that space, and so I just felt privileged that I was even able to be in that space with you. But I'll tell you what, I don't think I could go park in that parking space, that parking lot, like, I'm pretty sure, like, never again in my life do I ever need to, like, go back to that
No.
parking lot,
Oh my god,
like,
no.
ever. And I
No.
remember no, and I remember walking out with your husband, who was your boyfriend, on that last day and going with you and leaving without you.
Yeah.
Fuck that noise.
It was yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
who would have thought
that
that
was
first day on the playground in
right,
2003 that someday you would be escorting me to prison?
right.
Take that,
No,
PTO
absolutely.
moms.
When we said, "Yeah, we're not like those moms," we meant
I
it.
meant it. Imma prove it to you.
I love that. Um,
So
I
stupid.
love that unhoused woman was like, "You don't
She was right on so many
see?"
levels. You ma'am, I don't think you know what you're doing right now. You're
Yeah,
right, I don't. You're right.
yeah.
I gotta go to work. I just went to
But
work.
it's always so amazing what kind of things are placed into
Yeah.
our lives
Thank God for that woman.
to yes, to be able to
Thank
just,
you.
like, just that moment of clarity, right? Is that, like, moment of clarity, and
Yeah.
you told me a verse that wasn't the full truth of what happened, but it was relatively true in that space of what made you realize like, "Oh, fuck, I gotta do
Yeah.
something
I
different."
mean,
Like,
here she's telling me more truth about myself than I can, and it
absolutely.
was just like the
Absolutely.
contrast of our lives.
Yeah.
And I will say that one of the things that I learned through my time being incarcerated, through my time in, NA, we might look like we're in different parts of life, but we are all just big blobs of matter rolling around. And there is no, and when I was in prison, people would kind of pick on me a lot of like, what are you here for? Jaywalking,
Right.
right?
Right.
I am I am no different than anyone else. And I know that
Right.
I looked different, and I was trading commissary to help people write school papers because I had a higher education, so I was able to do that more.
Mhm.
But so I think came off as like someone who shouldn't be there. I don't know what that means. People say that to me now. People are shocked when I tell them. They're like, "You were in prison?"
Yeah,
And
so,
I'm
like,
like, "What does
who
that
should
mean?
be there?
Who should be?
Exactly.
Who
Who
should
should be
be?"
there? That's
It
ridiculous.
it
I am super grateful that I'm literally through my addiction because I was thinking, I mean, you say nobody knew. I was in recovery from opioid and alcohol use disorder and had no clue you were using. I had no
Nobody.
clue. But there was also a period of that point that I was also using as well,
Yeah.
right? And it's so crazy, but I have always said, and I will always maintain till the day that I die, thank God I am so scared of getting in trouble because only thing that is the only thing that kept me
Yeah.
from doing something that could literally have landed me in prison.
Yeah.
Only because I'm so afraid of getting in trouble and thank God, because when the doctor scripts no longer when those ran out, when the other pieces, where I could easily get them without breaking the law technically, ran out, at that point, I was out because I was so scared of that. That's the only
Yeah.
difference is
Well,
because I'm not a risk taker.
I know. And, oftentimes when people say to me, like, I can't believe you were in prison. And I'm like, I was doing, maybe not doing the same thing as other people. I think I really took it to the next level. But the difference between me and other people is I got caught.
Absolutely.
I got caught.
Ab Not only did you get caught, you took
I
accountability.
did.
You did.
I
You
took
took
a lot of
accountability.
accountability.
A lot of accountability. You were just open, honest, and accountable for
Yeah.
it. Where if yeah, it could have gone another way if we had handled that first situation, and if we weren't just so
So
naive,
naive.
so naive, and I think that's part of our privilege is we were literally privilegedly
Oh, yeah.
naive
Girl, you
in the
should have.
fact that, well, if we just take accountability, because 'cause I'm sure everyone is like, "You did fucking
I have to tell
what?
you.
Why would that?"
So in prison, my job was I drove a transportation van, and you have to do it in a duo. So you have a driver, and then you have the person who hops out and opens the doors, right? So I went through a couple partners, and not my final partner, but the only reason she wasn't my final is because she got out before I did. But my ride or die, we're in the car together, and she's the one who really like set me straight and saved me. And so you're in this van, and you're driving in a quarter-mile loop at 5 miles an hour for 8 hours. Okay, there's a lot of time to talk. And when I told her, you and I,
I can
she was like, "You did
only you
what?" She was like, "You did what?" She's like, "You are the dumbest person." She's like, "Only a white, middle-aged
exact
woman would just show up to the
exactly,
police station and be like, 'Here I am,' kind of."
exactly.
So stupid. My
Oh my
God.
god.
I know.
No, for real.
I
Yeah.
She was something else, and she was in her early 20s, and I learned
Yeah.
so much from her. I would tell her stories about my life, and she would give me feedback that was like, "You are an idiot. You are an idiot." And I'd be like, "I know I am. I'm in prison." So, I mean, I know we wanted to also spend some time on what it's been like since I got home. And this is already going super long, but I do want to say that since I've been home, I have really learned how unfair and unjust the world is to
Mhm.
people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system. It is
Mhm.
insane. And
Mhm.
I knew this from the news. I knew this from stories. I knew this in my soul before I went,
Mhm.
but living it is different. There's no such thing as rehabilitation, according to many people in society. For many people, um, my humanity stops to them after they hear that I am a felon. I've had absolutely wild things said to me. For some people in my life, this part of my life is all they need to think
That's
ill.
your whole entire.
That's my whole
Yeah.
identity. This is my whole identity.
Yep. It is.
Well, you went to
Yep.
prison.
Yep.
Okay. And,
Mhm.
there's
Mhm.
so much more, and it's just this really weird thing of like we expect people to, like, when I tell my story of how much I changed and how much I learned and how grateful I am for that time and the amount of work that I've done in therapy and EMDR, physically, mentally, people are like, that is so amazing. But
Valid.
but
And
yeah,
you went to
it's like
prison.
we want we want people to have that good story, but we don't want them to have any of the privilege of now also being out of prison and done your time. There is no such thing as I did my time and it's over. It will never be over. And I say that as a college educated white middle class woman
Yep.
who has a incredible amount of support. I have, thank God I have friends that own businesses that trust me and know what kind of person I am and have given me jobs. I've always had a place to live. I've always had a job. I've always had, I mean, when I came out, I moved into a friend's house and I lived with her and her family for almost a year. It was just like I was given this like blessing and this soft landing,
Mhm.
and I still struggled. So I cannot even imagine all of
Yeah.
the privileged things that I have and still struggling. Imagine not having any of those things and being expected to what? Just get a job that doesn't exist for you? Pay
Right.
get a lease? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Right. Yeah. And I don't think people actually realize the caveat to crime-free housing sounds great in theory and excludes a lot of people from renting. I remember helping so many, working in substance use disorder and working in treatment and trying to help so many people find jobs and find apartments. And now in 2026, it's a little bit easier
Yeah.
to find some places to live, but it is very difficult. By me saying a little bit easier, it meant that 10 years ago when I was doing this work, I had a list of about 3 to 4 apartment complexes that actually would
Take someone.
rent to you.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. If you had a felony on your record.
I know
Yeah.
so at one point, I've always had a place to live. Um, but it's been a little sketchy. I will say that. And,
Mhm.
when I left prison, I was no longer in my relationship to the person that I am now married to, who was my boyfriend at the time. I was living in a trailer for a while on my friend's property, my amazing friend who was also giving me a job. And she's got a big property and they had sewage hookups and I needed a place to live. And she helped me find a trailer and it was like her nieces or something like that. It was not a nice trip, but I made it
Yeah.
nice. I made it nice. And my amazing
Yeah.
friend put a new air conditioner in it. Thank God, because that was actually the hottest summer Arizona has ever had. And my
Mhm.
daughter and I
Mhm.
lived in this trailer on her property. It was one of the best times of our lives because there were cows and chickens and goats and a huge pool and people that loved and supported us. The trailer leaked and the roof leaked, and it was a really bad monsoon season. So if there was a big rainstorm, like I knew where we would go to bed and we'd put the buckets out like in the right spots, right? So
Mhm.
that we knew like in the morning when we woke up, it would be dripping, but we would be fine. And I kept a ladder set up on the side. And so the first I would get up and I would start the coffee pot, and then I'd go outside, I'd get my broom, I'd climb the ladder, and I'd stand on the trailer and I'd sweep all the water off. I'm sweeping the water off and I'm like, what a beautiful view. I can see the mountains up here. So many of my friends would get pictures from the top of the trailer. I'd be like, look at the mountains, right? Right? Which is like really just trying to make the best of the situation, right? Um, I applied for an apartment when I was living there, and it was the first time I had put myself out there in that way. And I went and saw it, and I took my daughter with me, and I talked to the owners, and I was real honest. I said, I have a criminal background, and we kind of talked through it a little bit, and we left, and I said, sweetie, I don't think this is gonna happen. You know, they looked pretty horrified when I said that. And I said, so it's okay. You know, it was getting close to the next summer. And I said, we'll make it through another summer. We'll be okay. Like, we have fans, we have air conditioning, we have a pool. Like, we'll go to the movies a lot because that's what we were doing to get out of the heat. And we went to bed and it was like midnight. And I thought, you know, I'm just going to check my email. I couldn't sleep. And I said, I'm just going to check my email and see if they wrote me back so I know I didn't get it and then I could just go to sleep. And I had an
Yeah.
email that I got it, and they said, we would love to rent to you and your daughter. And I just like, I was shaking her. I was trying to wake her up and just be like, we did it. Like, we finally, like, to me, that was like, we did it. We made it. Like, someone trusts me enough to come here by
Yeah.
myself without another adult, just me. And, you know, part of that was made
Mhm.
possible by you and the work I was doing with you. And I definitely did not get there by myself, but I was like, I can't believe we made it. Like, we did it. And I remember when we moved in, I took a picture. I had counted the days from the day I left prison to the day we moved into the apartment. And I had taken a picture of her, and it was something like 500 days or 570 days or something like that. And I was like, I've been waiting for this for 576 days. And it was like the biggest accomplishment. And that was just getting an apartment. People do that every day and don't even think about it, you know?
Yeah.
It was a big
Yeah.
deal. It was life-changing
Yeah.
for me to accomplish that and stay there for a
Yeah.
year. I lived in that apartment for a year and we loved it and we were so happy to be there. I didn't take it for granted a single day. I would wake up and go in the kitchen and just be like, this is mine. Like, I could do whatever I want here. And, you know, to have that feeling of like truly, like, I have climbed the mountain and here I am. Like, it was so
Yeah.
great.
And this is all coming from, I mean, just even I'm just thinking of how, living in upper to middle class parts of Chandler to the difference, right, of just being grateful. And I think it's one of the pieces is, the perspective of the things of what actually matters in life. That's it. Like what actually matters
Yeah.
in life
I think
is
that's probably
kind of what comes out.
it's probably a good spot to wrap it up because I have said this multiple times and I think that this is very true. There are I have personally discovered that there are many, many things that can be taken away from you that maybe you think can't. And when you're sitting in a prison dorm room with 350 other people, you don't have literally anything except for what's in your mind. And, you know,
Mhm.
the support in the community that you have, but the only thing that you really, really have is your brain and what you tell
Yeah.
yourself and how you decide to make it through. I will never take my stuff and things for granted again, but I will also never, ever, ever forget that my brain and the way I carry myself and what I say to myself when I first wake up in the morning is the most precious thing that I have. and I will never let
Yeah.
myself down again in that way and allow myself to think bad things about myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Which honestly is a great tee up to our next conversation, which gets into some forgiveness. So, yeah, we're having couple just heavy episodes, but I think they're really important for foundational understanding of kind of where we're coming from. And we're just, appreciative of the ones that are coming on the ride with
Yeah,
us.
for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
I'm really proud of you.
Thanks.
I'm really, really, really proud of you.
Thank you.
I know how hard that is,
Yeah,
um, for this space, and I just am. So, I look forward to our next one.
me too. Thank you for being there for me and being my person with this. I can't think of a better person to have had this conversation with in this way. Hey,
I love you.
I love you too. Thank you so much for joining us today and listening to our stories and supporting us. We cannot wait to see you next week, where we very reluctantly are going to talk about forgiveness.